Welcome everyone. Today is day 28. What we're going to be doing is we're talking about eyewitness and testimonial evidence. Now, for our agenda today here's kind of what we're going to start out with. Eyewitness and testimonial evidence specifically has a lot of factors that can influence how valid and how reliable that type of testimony is. So we are first just going to go and we're going to start talking about what are some different factors for that eyewitness testimony. Then you, as a forensic investigator, you are going to have to go and you are going to have to be an eyewitness for some sort of thing. Now, not necessarily just in forensics, but at some point in your life, you're going to see something. And I want to teach you how to become a better eyewitness. Now, this is the very, very last week for my seniors. So, what we're going to do is that as of today, you don't have anything assigned. I'm not going to assign anything new, and we're going to do a little activity come next time, just kind of as a wrap up for all of our seniors, and I'll let you know a little bit more about that at the very end. But let's just first talk about what we're talking about today. So, if you remember from good old Unit 1, eyewitness and first testimonial evidence is either oral or written evidence given under oath. Remember, this is different than like hearsay, and hearsay is like the grapevine. He said, they said, she said. It really has to be just how exactly a person sees and interprets an event. So, to start out, I'm going to do an activity with you first. I am going to show you a very, very short clip, about 20 seconds, and I want you to honestly answer a question that I ask about this clip. All right? Now, something very important. You are being an eyewitness for a case. Imagine you are on the jury, sitting there, and you take this seriously, okay? All right, let's do it. So, here is your video. So, now let me ask you a question. How fast was the car going when it collided with the police officer in the dash cam in which you see? And I just want you to think of a number in your head. Now, we're going to get back to this because what I just did is I went and I gave you a leading question. There's lots of psychological factors that can affect an eyewitness testimony, such as anxiety or stress, a reconstructive memory, a weapon focus, or a leading question. My question that I asked you, how fast was that car going whenever it collided with that police officer, is an example of a leading question. Imagine had I said, whenever that car bumped into that police officer or demolished the police cruiser. My word choice makes a really, really big difference on how you interpret the event. All four of these are very, very, very important in trying to discover how an eyewitness behaves and how they exactly interpret an event. So, now let's try next one I'm going to go and I'm going to give you 30 seconds, not me actually, like pause the video for 30 seconds. And I want you to try and memorize all 20 items on the screen. And you are not allowed to write anything down. Okay? So, 3, 2, 1. Pause for 30 seconds. Okay. Now, whenever you came back, the idea here is how many of these items were you able to get? 5, 10, maybe 15. Of me, more than likely, I would probably go and I would say, I don't know, maybe 6, 7. I'd probably be pretty good at. Now, let's try the exact same thing, but this time you are going to have 15 seconds. And again, I'm going to show you an image. I want you to pause for 15, and then you are going to answer some questions for me. All right? Okay, so here's the idea. Hopefully, whenever you saw that photo, the original photo, if I went and I started asking you questions. Now, in class, what I like to do for this activity is I like to bring someone up in front of the class, and you literally just standing there, imagine it's just you in front of your 20 peers, and I start asking you these questions. Where was the photo taken? How many trash bins? How many recycling bins? How many chairs? What time of day? Were the theater doors open or closed? And finally, was there a star on top of the Christmas tree? All of these questions are meant to go, and they're meant, especially if you're pulled up to the front of the classroom, to influence what is called the Yerkes-Dodson curve. The Yerkes-Dodson curve is something that in psychology that you have a breaking point. Specifically, whenever you are stressed, if you are stressed enough, you can remember more. And past a level of stress, then you remember less. So let me kind of describe it this way. Of if you have been taking a test, imagine a test for like a really, really not easy class, but a less challenging class and a much more rigorous class. If I were to give you a test from, say, just forensics as opposed to like AP Bio or AP Chem, obviously your stress for one of those would be higher. The idea here is that in pulling someone up to the very, very front of the classroom, two things happen. First off, their stress increases. As much as you all say that you're perfectly comfortable around you and your peers, you're not. And with your stress increasing, you get to go and you get to describe certain things that happen in this photo. Now, what else happens is that whenever you become stressed and stressed and stressed, there's a point that starts to drop off. And your memory actually degrades past that certain amount of time. So, stress has both a benefit and a negative, and it really depends on what exactly you are going to try and figure out. So, again, if I ask you these questions, how many of them do you think you would have gotten right in front of the class? This is a reconstruction. You're trying to go and you're trying to think, okay, obviously it's the theater. There was a star. Was there a star? And you're going and you're trying to go and reconstruct this memory. But something else that I did, if you didn't notice, is that your reconstruction and your reconstructive memory is going to be so much more powerful in somewhere that you're used to, such as our theater hallway, as opposed to just 20 random specific items. Again, this is something that affects an eyewitness testimony. Now, something that you have to know, and probably you could guess, eyewitness testimonies can be really, really, really unreliable at times. There's actually an entire thing called the Innocence Project that allows for them to go and to try to overturn eyewitness testimonies for more hard science, such as a DNA test of I think I've told you this before, but anytime an eyewitness testimony is the number one influencer for a jury, and it's ridiculous because there's so much science that can be lost through an eyewitness testimony as opposed to something else. So, I want you to think of some specific psychological traits that you think. And here's kind of what I mean is that imagine you are coming back from, or rather this, you're around your neighborhood just for a walk. Someone comes up and mugs you for everything that you have on your person. What do you think are some traits, either physiological or psychological traits, that would allow for you to make an instant conviction? So, let's talk a little bit about some traits that can influence an eyewitness testimony. The first one is age. And age is always, now, these aren't in like a specific order as to like effectiveness, but age is always really, really interesting because if the age is around like plus or minus 10 years, then it's much, much, much more accurate. So what I mean by that is that if you at 18 are mugged by a 28-year-old or somewhere around that age, then you are going to be able to more accurately define them as opposed to someone else around them. Of around the same age is more accurate, plus or minus 10 years. As opposed to if you are mugged by like a 50-year-old, then that's going to be a big, big difference. Now, something to go off and say that's really, really amusing is that the two extremes on either side of the spectrum can also increase the accuracy. If you are mugged by an 85-year-old man or a 10-year-old boy, then either one, you're going to be like, yeah, I was mugged by a 10-year-old with a knife. Like, instantly you understand that there's big, big, like, type of just, factors that can influence that. Secondly, is going to be race, and we're talking specifically about what is called the cross race effect. You are more likely to go and be able to remember someone from your own race than from others. So, again, I'll take it. 28-year-old, fine, male, Caucasian, doesn't matter, person, you are going to be the most likely to try to go and to try to tell that eyewitness. Now, secondly, is that, again, a traumatic effect can really, really have a big influence. What I'm really focusing here is called weapon focus, and this is one of the four really, really big parts. Anxiety and stress leads with the Dodson curve. Reconstructive memory is based off the location. Weapon focus is based off of just how you react. I've told you this before. If you are mugged with a weapon and a gun, specifically, the police don't ask you what does the person look like, they ask you what the gun looks like. That's weapon focus. You're going and you're focusing on a specific part of your crime rather than the face of your perpetrator. So if you have a weapon shown to you as opposed to someone that just walks up and says, hey, I have a gun, give me all of your belongings, then obviously your stress is going to go up and you'll know that you are now influenced by weapon focus. Then finally, time is always one of the big ones that my students like to say is that, Mr. Tate, if I go and I look at someone for, 30 minutes, if someone kidnaps me for hours on end, then yeah, you're going to be much, much more likely to focus on that perpetrator rather than just originally. And then finally, standout features. So this could be hats, sunglasses, tattoos, piercings, birthmarks. It doesn't, anything that's striking to you about a person can go and give you an influence based off their physiological effect. Now, this is reconstructive memories, finally, is that if you are familiar with the location of our activity beforehand, hopefully you did better on the Nerinx section than you did just the random items section. It's because in a well-known location or in a location that you are comfortable with, you are going to absolutely be better at trying to reconstruct that memory. Any of these are really, really telltaling and trying to say what exactly you have. Now, there are a lot of other things that can influence eyewitness testimony. Do you remember way, way, way back in Unit 1, the very, very first, well, actually, second step of a crime scene? The first one is to secure the scene, to go and to make sure that everything's safe, there's no danger around. The second one is to separate the witnesses. And we talked about something called collusion. That is, you're saying something and I'm saying something, and we're comparing stories of actually, if you go and you try and understand, if you're ever in a jury, the juror or the judge specifically tells you do not do any research about the, defendant, about the prosecutor, about the case itself. You cannot go and do any research about it. And this is what they're trying to change. They're saying that what you see outside of your case is going to influence your overall understanding and your memory. So there's lots and lots and lots of different ways in which you process and which just an eyewitness can kind of go and be like, again, challenging for you to describe. Now, what this chart shows is that this chart shows just kind of a very, very brief way in which your brain works. And it says just information from your senses to what you pay attention to perception, to short term, to eventually long term. And you can get, again, into the biological, into the actual psychological effects of this. And it makes a big, big difference. But for the purpose of our class, here's kind of what I want you to know is that in between here, is exactly wherever that break can happen. And here's what I mean by this. Everyone across the board, no matter what, has lied to their parents at some point. Here's my story is that if you go and you lie to your parents and you lie to your parents enough and you say, oh yeah, I was da 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 da, and you say that, weeks upon weeks upon weeks, slowly your mind starts to go and process. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I was definitely doing, it changes how you understand and how you interact with the memory. Your perception itself can't change. You see what you see, but the switch from perception into memory is where your change can happen. Or how you perceive something is based off of how you pay attention to it. Any of these underlying factors can play such a large role in your overall understanding. So the breaks in between are really, really important. Now, I'm going to go and I'm going to give you this example. Imagine you are at a grocery store and you're just buying milk. The following person walks in, and I'm going to give you 5 seconds in order to identify this person. Okay? So, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is that I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Of 10 seconds, I want you to choose who you think is your perpetrator. Okay? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right? What number? A lot of you probably go and you look at it, and because it's the same photo, either side is just kind of shifted and cropped, you would go and you would tell me 2. Now, as opposed to just these 5 seconds, imagine that your stress is up. Imagine again that there's a weapon involved. And I don't give you 5 seconds. I give you, okay, you're going to see a next person. Okay, there's your person. Move on. What number? How many of you do you think that you could accurately do it? There's lots and lots of different factors that can affect an eyewitness memory and an eyewitness testimony. So, if we went and we did that activity, and I went and I told you, okay, which person is it? And you told me instantly 2, congratulations. The shorter amount of time used for a lineup, more than accurate, or more than likely, the more accurate you are going to be. There's actually a ratio. The less time, the more accurate. The more time, the less accurate in between on a lineup. But lineups really in this day and age are not that popular as much as you see it in shows and movies and the such. So, throughout all of this, I want you to think of something that just by itself affects your memory. I want you, well, let me put it this way. I want you to think of what is the most memorable thing about Nerinx this year. Hopefully, this is tied to some sort of emotions of I was thrilled, I was happy. Maybe it was the day, in which we all saw each other after summer break. Maybe it was the first day of actual classes where you were all dressed as, you know, bikers and, I forget your movie. But the idea is you're going and you're recalling a flashbulb memory. And a flashbulb memory is some type of memory just based off of emotion itself. So I have some examples here of, do you remember what happened or where you were when? During my generation, it's always, do you remember what or where you were during 9/11? But I know that that's a little bit younger for you, so meh. But again, any type of memory associated with emotion is called a flashbulb memory. So I want you to think then, if you are going and you are stopped again, are you creating a flashbulb memory? So now let me ask you, how do you become a better observer? How are you, as a forensic investigator or just a person in general, going to go and become a more accurate, just, investigator? The very first step is that you have to turn off all filters. Instead of me talking to you here through a screen, imagine had we done all of these and we had done them at Nerinx right now. Again, the filters that you are accused of, like my phone going off over on the side, is going to go and it's going to influence how you create this memory. Secondly, is that you need to first collect your information and then interpret that information later. What I mean by that is that whenever a police officer sees something, they write everything down. Every single little thing they write down instantly because they're trying to figure out exactly how to interpret that information in a later date. And then finally, they document, document, document. Write down as much as you can. Photograph as much as possible. Understand that your memory is going to be faulty, but there are some ways and some tricks in which you can change it. So here's our summary for the day. Of basically, your environment plays such a large role in an eyewitness testimony. Eyewitness testimonies, though, are really, really just kind of, they can be good and they can be bad. It just depends on the criteria in which the victim experienced during that eyewitness testimony. And finally, being a good eyewitness takes a lot of practice. You have to be very observant. You have to be someone that, notices things, recalls them easily. It takes time. So, everyone, that's the end of today. As I said, what we're going to be doing is that next class period, I'm hoping just to have you do some activity just kind of as a wrap up. Seniors, I know that next class period, unfortunately, is going to be your very, very last class period. I know that that's difficult on many reasons, both for you and for I, because I would have loved to give you some more information, have you done your final with me, everything of the sort, but I know that it's a challenge. So, I'll give you more information later. As I said, I hope everyone's still doing great, and I will see you next time. Thank you, everyone. See ya.